This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Ziak and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. And that union, Jay, has provided this episode. This is our second chance episode. It's where we give a young, troubled album a second chance at life. Scoop them up off the street.
Scrappy underdog.
Yep. No, so if you've listened to the show, you know that we do album review tournaments every month. Every month, anybody who suggests an album can have it go into our tournaments. You just do that at digmeoutpodcast.com. And our patrons in the union, they vote in those polls. And sometimes we have really close races. And we're like, oh, it's too bad we don't get to do that one. And then so we had an extra spot here for an episode, and I said, hey, let's do a second chance review. So I took a bunch of the ones that came in second or close to that. We had some where there was like three-way ties for second and, you know, all sorts of crazy things. But I picked 9 albums that were the topics of discussion that people thought, oh, that might be the winner. They didn't end up winning. And I threw them back into a poll and said, okay, second chance. Here were our second chance options going into this. And it's a pretty, I mean, this is a nice, diverse, and for the most part, I think people would know if you listen to 90s music. I think you're going to know most of this. So, Pocketful of Kryptonite, Spin Doctors.
Heard it, yes.
Pandemonium by Killing Joke. By the way, I kept that misspelling when I put it in.
See, my brain, like when you just copy paste it and you read it, like my brain just doesn't process it.
Exactly.
It just sees the K.
Low Estate by 16 Horsepower. Spacesuit by Shift. Superstition by Susie and the Banshees. Breathe by Loud Lucy. Women in Technology by Whitetown. Saltpeter by Ruby. And Let Love In by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. This was sort of close, but there was always kind of a leader. Coming in second was Killing Joke. Coming in third was Loud Lucy. Fourth, Shift and Spacesuit, their album Spacesuit. The winner of this was Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Let Love In. And I think that this album actually might have been one that went to like a runoff where we had a tie and then we had to do like a 24-hour runoff. We've had to do those occasionally. But that's our winner. I'm surprised that 16 Horsepower got 0 votes because a lot of people have talked about how we need to do a 16 Horsepower album, and yet it got no votes.
It's all about the competition.
Right. And to be fair, that, you know, I also thought Spin Doctors, because they were just in a poll, was possibly going to get the nod, because people were like really interested. What are Tim and Jay going to say about Spin Doctors? They got 6%. So they didn't even carry any momentum into this episode, which or into this poll. So Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Jay, what's your take on Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds? Not take, but what's your history with them? Have you listened to Nick Cave? Do you know anything? Own any records, that sort of thing?
I don't. I know Red Right Hand from Peaky Blinders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was in some other movies.
It's been covered a lot. It's probably
I just sort of did a little bit of research, and it looks like he's had quite a few placements in movies and TV shows over the years. So X-Files at one point. So I think that's my familiarity with him. Haven't really spent, I mean, that in the 80s episode we did for what was the name of the band?
The Birthday Party.
Yep. That was pretty much it for me. How about you?
I'm a Nick Cave fan. I own several of his records. I picked up actually when I was down in Dallas, Texas for a business meeting. I had some time off and I met up with Eric Grubbs, an old friend of the show, and we went to a record store down there and I found a Nick Cave record for like $10. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is not, it was like an original press of a 90s Nick Cave record. And it was like $10. And I said, I don't even know this record. This is not one of them that's in my like purview in terms of which records I like, but I just bought it because I was like, it's a $10 record from by Nick Cave. I'm not going to pass that up. I've actually, I know a lot of his albums. I've listened to his side project that with Warren Ellis in the 2000s called Grinder Man. That was a much more abrasive and much more band oriented sound. And I'm familiar with the work he's done on soundtracks. He's actually written a movie called The Proposition with Guy Pearce, I think was the lead in that. It's like a Western in Australia. And then he's done film scores along with, I believe, Warren Ellis he did the one for The Road, based on the Cormac McCarthy novel, Hell or High Water, which is a good movie with Chris Pine. It's by Taylor Sheridan, who did Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And he's got some other ones. And so he was somebody that I discovered in the 90s, but I didn't really get into him until the late 2000s, 2010s, like stuff like that. And then I started actually listening to the records. So, but I haven't gone deep into the back catalog. I know mostly the new stuff kind of going forward. And I remember hearing like he did a song with Kylie Minogue in the 90s, and he did a song with PJ Harvey, and he's done a lot of interesting like other things than just the band. So little history. I'll give a little history on Nick Cave. Nick Cave was born in 1957 in Victoria, Australia. He's actually from a city there, but I can't pronounce it. It's like Warwick and Beale. I'll probably totally mess that up. Like I mentioned, he was in the Birthday Party. That was in the 80s from like, actually started in 77 and it went till 83. And then after that is when he formed the Bad Seeds. The Bad Seeds start in 83 after the breakup of the Birthday Party, but there are some people who are in the Birthday Party who are also in the basically the Bad Seeds band. First record came out in 1984, From Her to Eternity. That's the album that I got in Dallas.
Okay.
That's the first record. That was followed by, and he was very prolific in the 80s and 90s. Following year, The Firstborn Is Dead was released. These are on at this point Mute Records. He worked with Flood, the producer from who worked with a bunch of people, U2, Smashing Pumpkins, Depeche Mode. That's who he worked with on the first record. Firstborn and Dead came out in 85. Kicking Against the Pricks came out in 86, as did Your Funeral, My Trial. So he had two albums out in the same year in 86. And then he took a year off. Tender Prey came out in 1988. The Good Son in 1990. And that's where I think I started with his stuff, because I knew the Ship song from that album and the Weeping song, and there's a lot of the songs are like the Something song on that record. And then Henry's Dream came out in 92. Again, this is on Mute Records. They had a live album in 93. And then the album we're talking about, Let Love In, was released in 1994. Again, on Mute Records. It was co-produced with Tony Cohen, who was a producer for the Birthday Party. So like it's somebody that they've been around for a long time. Murder Ballads came out in 1996. And that's the first time I think I was like contemporary with Nick Cave. Like that, when that came out, I was at the radio station like you. I remember the single for Where the Wild Roses Grow with Kylie Minogue. Stagger Lee, which is it's a traditional song that he covered. He did Henry Lee, again, another traditional song. He did that with PJ Harvey. And then that followed up with The Boatman's Call. That's another record that I actually have on vinyl of his. And then let's see, they took off a couple years, and then in 2001, the album No More Shall We Part came out. Nocturama came out in 2003. Abitur, The Lyre of Orpheus came out in 2004, and that was co-produced with Nick Lunay, who we are familiar with from a number of records. Dig Lazarus Dig came out in 2008, again with Nick Lunay producing. And then there was a 5-year break, and then Push Away the Sky came out in 2013. That was followed by Skeleton Tree in 2016. Now there was a break there because sadly Nick Cave's son died. He was 15. I think they were like hiking or something, and he fell from a ledge, and so he took a couple years off to like deal with that. Ghost Teen came out in 2019, followed by there was a B-sides album that came out in 2021, and then Wild God came out just this year. Let's get some comments. Did anybody actually comment on Nick Cave? Gavin said, well, Gavin's from Australia, of course. He said it's the best album on here. Chip Midnight said, I've never spent time with Nick Cave music, but have heard great things about his concerts. I bought a ticket for a show in Columbus in March, and I'm now starting to dive into his catalog. Would be interested to hear what you guys think of the album. I wanted to get tickets for that, but I didn't get a chance to. They sold out very fast.
Failure.
I know. I saw him on Austin City Limits many years ago, and he was great. Like, just owned the audience the entire time. Ian McIver said, Killing Joke. I wouldn't mind Nick Cave or Whitetown, but that's my preference. I think that's it. I think everybody else went for other picks. So once again, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds won with possibly the least amount of comments, as is the tradition around here. This album released again April 1994. Tony Cohen produced. There were 3 singles released: Do You Love Me, Lover Man, and Red Right Hand. There are some special guests on this record. Tex Perkins, who you might know, was in a band called Beasts of Bourbon, who we covered many, many, many years ago. Yeah. He does backing vocals on one of the songs. Number of the people who were in the birthday party are on this record. Warren Ellis is on this record, but only a little bit, and then he sort of becomes a full member of the band going forward. He plays violin on Ain't Gonna Rain No More and Do You Love Me Part 2. And then there's a number of people. David McComb, who was in a number of bands, the Triffids, Black Eyed Susans. He's does backing vocals on here. Catherine Blake, who was in the band Miranda Sex Garden. She does backing vocals on the album. Miranda Sex Garden was one of those bands where I always saw their name in the 90s and I had no idea what they sounded like. And then our friends named their band Miranda Sound, and it got real confusing. The rest of the band, besides Nick Cave, is Blixa Bargeld on guitar and backing vocals, Martin Casey on bass guitar and backing vocals, Mick Harvey on guitar, backing vocals, strings, tambourine shaker, Conway Savage on backing vocals and piano. That is a great name, Conway Savage.
Epic, yeah.
And Thomas Wilder on drums, tambourine, timpani, triangle, temple block. Temple block is a type of wood percussion instrument, and backing vocals. So that is our lineup for this. This album sold 60,000 in the UK and 50,000 in the United States. Not bad. Not bad for what we're about to talk about. So Jay, this is your first album experience with Nick Cave. Tell me what works for you on Let Love In.
It's a pretty killer band. I think they do a great job uh, orchestrating sound that fits his vocal style really well and still delivering pretty hooky songs, surprisingly. I was really interested in sort of the format here. So the bass is interesting. It sounds like they're playing, it's a big round sound, like they're playing with their fingers. There's a couple parts where the bass line's isolated. Wish I could isolate it more in some of these tracks because it almost has like a Motown feel to the bass lines, but none of the other music is like that. Just the bass lines are.
Beside her, yet I seem so obsolete and small. I found God and all his devils inside her. In my bed she cast the blizzard out. Mock sun blazed upon her head, so completely filled with light she was.
And then you've got the more orchestrated drums, which I think offsets that like good groove coming from the bass, but then you've got drums that are less about playing 4/4 beats and more about like adding atmosphere and dynamics and accenting things. But I think that's sort of the bed. But I think the thing that really took it to the next level for me was how the piano is used on this record and how it works with the vocal. Even the tone of the piano, it's a very bright piano sound, more like an upright, which counters his very deep voice really well. I think that's very effective, and the piano can help establish the melody when the vocal delivery it can be more spoken. It's more about attitude. It's more about, emotion than, strictly melody. So that the piano can really support that melodic theme in the song. And then the two can intertwine with each other and not get in the way. Like the piano can be pretty busy on this record at times, and it works really well. Like it's never in the way of his singing because the tones are so different and they complement each other so well. And I think the final layer to it gives the record all of the mood that it has. It has a very like visual darkness to it. Is the guitars and the organs are playing more of an atmospheric role. They're bringing tension. They're building up the dynamic. These songs tend to crescendo in louder sections where they'll sing louder, but also like the organ rises and, the guitars will get louder in those sections. When they bring the violin, it plays the same similar role where it's in the verses, it's kind of like playing these drony notes that are just setting the mood, and then they get busier and kind of build as the song goes on. So I thought that overall formula worked really good with his voice, but also I think more importantly wasn't just sound. They actually deliver really well written songs that they're pretty conscious of delivering solid hooks. Even some of them like Ain't Gonna Rain and Lay Me Low, like they establish those hooks right away. They don't spend a lot of time letting the atmosphere build and starting to sing a verse and then developing a hook somewhere in a chorus. Those songs actually introduce those ideas pretty quick and what the melodic hook of the song is. And I think that helps carry you through. So once that gets in your once that gets in my head, then I can sort of go along for the journey because they're coming back to it all the time, or at least, I'm anticipating it.
Once there came a storm in the form of a girl. It blew to pieces my snug little world. Sometimes I swear I can still hear it howl down through the wreckage and the ruins. And it ain't gonna rain anymore. Now my babe is gone. And it ain't gonna rain anymore. Now my babe.
And I think that helps this type of writing, so it doesn't feel like you're some of the tempos are down. You're not spending a lot of time waiting for the song to develop. You sort of preview things and you get the sense of what the theme is, and you keep coming back to that, and then it kind of crescendos, and maybe you'll have a middle section that'll have like a organ or piano solo. So I think the writing is pretty clever in terms of it, balancing this atmospheric mood and tension, but also giving your ears some things, melodies to grab onto and remember and deliver some, good moments. So that's what worked for me. How about you?
Well, you covered a lot of it, and the thing you said about the Motown bass really makes sense, because the bass is, even though a lot of this record is slow to mid-tempo, the bass is the thing that's like giving you a little oomph because of that finger playing, very, I hate to say like Stax or Muscle Shoals sounding bass. And I think that's what's so interesting, is that he's pulling from a lot of very American traditional sounds. I mean, there's like rockabilly on here and sort of like these gothic southern ballads, and
there's a little gospel, there's a little like Western sounding stuff. Yeah.
But he recontextualizes it in his unique way with, like you said, this amazing band that is just doing so many interesting things with guitars and keyboards and organs and percussion. Red Right Hand is sort of the touchstone, not just for this album, for Nick Cave's career, really. And I mean, it's a wild song about a serial killer. It's very menacing, but it just like pulls you in, and you're in this world, in this story, hearing about this craziness. And it's just, unlike, he's truly a unique artist in the sense that he is able to craft lyrics that are so literary, but are still also able to refine them down to the essentially pop music format. I mean, none of these songs, you have a couple, there's like two songs that I think are more on what the grinder man end of things are, which is Jangling Jack and Thirsty Dog. Those give you an idea of what grinder man sounds like. A lot of chaos, noise, yelling, that kind of thing.
Driving trucks in at a bar, call a ring-ding-ding. Jack pushes through the door and he crosses the floor, tips his hat to a man grinning in the corner, going do-da-do, going do-da-do, going do-da-do, going do-da-do. Says I'm Jangling Jack, I go do-da-do. Wanna ring in his badge, want a little umbrella too, and he flops on his stool. She's a grinning man laugh, so Jack laughs back. Jack raises his glass, says God bless this country and everything in it. Losers than the win, as the good guys never seen. The grinner man says, buddy, it's all yakety yak. Whips out a little black pistol, shoots a bullet in Jack. I hear now Jangling Jack, do-da-do, do-da-do. Jangling Jack, do-da-do, do-do. Jangling Jack.
And I understand, like, he really moves away from that going forward. So Grinder Man was like the outlet for like the loud and obnoxious songs, and he explores more of the gospel, more of the more of the slower ballad stuff going forward. And just right off the bat, it's just giving you this weird combination. I think I mentioned like there's like a Tom Waits element to it, but there's also like a Jim Morrison Elvis thing happening with the bassiness of his voice. It is so unlike what we were listening to in the 90s in a lot of ways, but it also makes complete sense that, you know, he's down in Australia not really caring about like grunge or whatever. He's just like, I'm doing my own thing, and if people catch on to it, fine. They love him in Australia. Clearly he was a niche artist in the United States, selling only 50,000 copies. But yeah, I mean, the closest you can compare his voice to is like a crooner, like Morrissey, maybe. Uh, it's so unique. So it's one of those things where like if people hear him and don't like his vocal, they're never gonna like get it. It's just not gonna be for them.
It reminded me a little bit of Leonard Cohen too.
Yes, yeah. And again, a great lyricist, amazing storyteller, can really evoke emotion and twist it to make it both, I guess, very beautiful, but also, like I said, menacing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think this works really well as an album too. Like I love the opening closing tracks. I think that's a really nice job because you do get a different flavor on the back half. It's like a more relaxed version, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
It almost feels like the closing song of the Saturday Night Live show, like at the end when they have all the crowd out, like or the cast out, and the band's just like jazzy jamming at the end, doing the closing like song. Like that's how it kind of felt to me. Like, all right, guys, we're wrapping this album up. Everybody, come in, get into the studio. We're all gonna sing. It's gonna be beautiful.
Do you love me? By the river, it gives life, but it takes it away. By you, there comes a time when you just cannot deliver. Well, this is a fact, this is a stone cold truth. Do you love me? I love you, handsome. Do you love me? Yes, I love you. You are handsome.
It kind of ends it on a weirdly positive note, even though Do You Love Me? And just for the most part, this whole album is just so dark. Like Nobody's Baby Now is a freaking dark song about death. And Do You Love Me? It's just, these are really dark subjects that he's doing, and it's not, you know, and what is it, the next album's called Murder Ballads. So that's not unexpected from Nick Cave. That's his main focus of most of his lyrics is, you know, sex, death, religion, relationships, murder. Like he's interested in those sort of like, it's almost like he's pulling from pulp novels and pulp history to come up with a lot of this material, because it's very specific. And it's also like there's humor in here, like his like sort of dark humor that he slips in. So yeah, I really like this record a lot, and cannot say enough about how good the band is. Just backing him up, they come up with such interesting little, sometimes it'll just be like in Red Right Hand, where you just hear that organ like bump bump bump, yeah. Like so simple, just 3 notes,
yeah,
but it just adds the right texture. And it's the same thing with his vocal. I never listen to his lyrics and go, that felt clunky. You know, you hear people who try to do too much and it feels real clunky.
Yep.
He clearly agonizes over the right word choice and how to phrase it so that it's, even though it's dense, it's still melodic and it's still it flows well. So that's almost all the stuff that worked for me pretty much. So what didn't work for you?
Well, those two punkish moments are not great for me. Jangling Jack kills the vibe of the first half of the record for me. It just doesn't feel like it fits at all. It's kind of obnoxious, where the rest of the album has this cool, confident, dark, like it's pulling you into this space and, you know, concept and very visual. And I don't know, Jangling Jack just feels like a real left turn that doesn't fit for me. I think Thirsty Dog is better. It fits the album better. There's actual, you know, decent hook in that song.
I know you heard it all before. I'm sorry for this 3-year-old for the setting up our camps and wiring trenches. I'm sorry for the other night, and I'm sorry it don't make it right. I'm sorry for things I cannot even mention. I'm sorry. I'm feeling sorry and the thirsty dog. I'm sorry. I'm feeling very sorry and the thirsty dog. You keep reeling me back in my box. I'm sorry that I keep popping up in my crazy mouth.
There's an element to that, to the chorus where, you know, the sorry, sorry, sorry is delivered with this big gang chorus kind of approach. And you can kind of envision the band coming together and it being raucous, and it kind of fits. It's still like tonally though, just a little too much, especially that you go in that second half of the record and it's almost like going to, you know, it's more like somber and reflective, and Thirsty Dog is like this big energy song. So to go from that into this, the last 3 tracks of the record, which feel almost more, you know, the gospel feel in some of those songs, and it's just there's a somberness to it that is weird against Thirsty Dog. So I would pull both of those 2 songs, honestly. I think they just kill the vibe for me. There's a couple moments, this is nitpicky, where, you know, you can tell he's got a really cool voice, and when he stays in that low register and finds cool rhythms to play with, it works amazing. When he tries to push it a little bit, it gets a little pitchy dog. So like Do You Love Me Part 2, it's great because he gets you to that coins in my pocket go jingle jangle line, and then they take you to the chorus. It's a great, you know, line, great delivery, but then when you get to that chorus, he goes to sing the Do You Love Me part, and his voice is just a little off pitch there. And then I Let Love In, you can tell he's trying to push in some parts of that song to sing a little higher, and it's just a little flat. So those aren't deal breakers, but it would be kind of nice to hear that stuff just a little bit cleaner, or I don't know. I don't know if it's possible to get, you know, him a little closer there, maybe add a backup vocal to help a little bit. I don't know. Those are nitpicky though. I think the bigger thing
I'm sure
is
he
just
has
those
at
2
one
songs.
point. He's done a lot of different things with how you can arrange his material. So, I mean, like I think Dig Lagris Dig actually has like full on gospel choirs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's a big production. And I agree with you that Jangling Jack, I never need to hear that again. Thirsty Dog, at least it has like a sense of the rhythm, and the guitar has a purpose, and he's singing fairly consistently, even though it's more manic.
Yeah.
I do like you mentioned on like the piano on I Let Love In, like it just this beautiful like swirling piano part. Ain't Gonna Rain No More and Lay Me Now are both really slow, and Ain't Gonna Rain No More, like that is really Leonard Cohen territory. I mean, that is some slow, deep, dark stuff. So I can understand if people get like a little bored on this back half just because it's the slowest material, it's the most sparse, and then you have Thirsty Dog, which is just manic craziness. But first 3 tracks are great. You get rid of Jangling Jack, and then Red Right Hand and I Let Love In. Those are like, that's a really strong 5 tracks right there.
Yep.
But yeah, like you, I did notice his voice kind of stretching some points where he was not it didn't sound like he was as comfortable when he's down low. And in fact, when he does the chorus in Do You Love Me, it's almost like a throwaway, like, do you love me? Like it's much, it's more like spokenish, even though he does a lot of speak singing. It doesn't sound as inspired as the first track, even though I like the way it's musically how they reinterpret it.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't really have a lot of complaints, other than I don't really need to see Nick Cave's nipples on the covers.
Looking a little David Bowie-ish on that cover.
Yeah. And he's got a huge mullet. He's got
a huge neck. Look at the size of that
Kentucky waterfall going on there. And that really long, that is a strangely long neck.
Like, do a little hand test on yourself. You're like, okay, here's my head. And then let me measure my neck. His neck is like twice as tall as his head is.
Yeah, he's got like a giraffe neck. It's something. It's funny because this album's called Let Love In. So I was like, oh, maybe I hadn't really analyzed the lyrics. I'm like, maybe this is the song, the love album. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
You know, you got to caveat a little bit with an album like this. Either you're going to know right away if you're into the sound of this. I think with track 1, you know, you're going to know that, oh, you know, do I like this style of singing? You know, there's not like a bunch of guitar riffs on here. This, you know, you like the presentation and the sound of his voice, and you want to absorb yourself in the mood.
Yeah.
But if I can see a lot of folks not, and you're going to know that right away, you know, so that I think this is the good and bad with this record is tip your toe in, and, you know, if it feels good, you're going to probably go along for the ride and enjoy the whole thing.
Yeah. And as we've talked about, like, you know, the production on this record in terms of like various things, not all Nick Cave records sound the same musically. Skeleton Tree is very stripped down. There's like, sometimes it's just one instrument on a song, because that was the album after his son's passing. So it was a very sort of maudlin and self-reflective record that he is not at all. It's the inverse of this record in a lot of ways, where this sounds like, you know, when that beginning of Red Right Hand, it sounds like this orchestra's playing or something.
Yeah. How about who's playing the bell? This record has a couple tracks that have pretty key moments for bells.
I'm guessing that's the drummer, Thomas Wilder, who's doing all that kind of percussive stuff. Although maybe they brought in a bell guy. Maybe there's a bell guy in Australia.
That's got to take some guts, right? To be in the studio and be like, I think we should just lay in, like, decide you're going to be the one that introduces the bell into the track.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, I got an idea.
You would have been that person.
That would have been in my notebook of ideas. Yes. I was joking, totally off track, but we were listening to Rush. The Spirit of Radio came on in the car, and there's that end part. I don't know if you remember this, but at the very end of that song, when they're doing like the last time through the chorus, but it's just instrumental, there's a single note piano going do, 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 do. And I was like, Katie, if I ever did anything in music, that would be it. Like, that would be my claim to fame, is like, oh, Tim played the single note piano on a Rush single. Like, that's all I would want. That's all I need. I just need that one little thing. If I could have that, it would have justified every stupid idea I ever had while being in a band. Alas, I did not play that part because, well, I think I was 12 when that record came out. So maybe 10. So I don't think I was allowed to. I'm not going to, this was like on 120 minutes. Pretty sure the Red Right Hand video was on 120 minutes. I'm pretty sure that we played singles off of this at the radio station. This was purely a college radio thing. 1994. This is not anywhere near commercial radio.
Yeah, this doesn't even sound like a 90s record to me,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this could come out now. It could have come out 10 years ago. Could have come out in the 80s. I mean, maybe not this production, but 70s. uh, it's not really about, to me, when I listen to this, I don't hear anything that's relevant to the 90s. Do you?
No, and I think that that's what makes it interesting is that it's very timeless because I think the musical choices are rather timeless. Like
Yeah.
choosing to do gothic, southern gospel, rockabilly, these are like things that will just always exist in some form.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he's interpolating them in his unique way, it lends to its timelessness because he's choosing timeless sort of, bases to build the songs on.
Yep.
And there are some records where I with Nick Cave, where I'm like, yeah, this sounds stamped to a certain, especially because his earlier stuff is much more lo-fi. This is really like the first time I think that they went like full big production on a record. I know he had messed around with some other stuff in terms, like some of the sounds on this that are more experimental in terms of being a rock band. Although I don't even know if it's really right to call Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds a rock. I mean, I guess they're a rock band, but it's so I guess it's kind of post-punk in a way, or art rock. I don't know how to really describe it because, like you said, there's no guitar solo on this. There's
no. I think if you went with the traditional, like it combines together the traditional forms of American music, folk, blues, jazz, soul, whatever. Like you mash all those together. Some people would call that rock and roll.
Yeah,
but it's not it's not a guitar rock and roll record.
Right. And we've tackled artists that are quote unquote rock and roll, but don't necessarily, like there was the Eric Matthews album that we did many years ago. There was that one record. I'm forgetting. It was like it was one of those Australian picks where like we had no idea what it was going in, and now I'm forgetting which one it was.
Dirty Three.
Well, yeah, Dirty Three, but also there was the one.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? The Cruel Sea.
The Cruel Sea.
The Cruel Sea. The Honeymoon is Over. Like that was one that was like, yeah. Okay, I thought it was going to be just a rock band, but then they're doing like I said, like there's a weirdly, it's like blues and there's like there's like reggae on that record. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a weird record, and it came from Australia and Tex Perkins, and who's on this record, so I guess that makes sense. And it was the year before this, and Mick Harvey plays on it, and Tony Cohen was the producer who produced this, so it makes sense. There's this whole weird thing happening in Australia that we're not attuned to here in the States because we're listening to what's after Nirvana, Bush, and This Is the Year of the Offspring and Green Day. Like, mention one of these songs between. Hey, we've got the Green Day album or the Green Day single coming up. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and the Offspring.
Right.
That's not happening. College radio, yes. Mainstream radio, no. It's already started to, shrink down a little bit and just go with the hits.
Yep.
So, how are you rating this one, Jay? Worthy album, better EP, or decent single?
Worthy album. I definitely cut Jangling Jack. I could leave Thirsty Dog. I would think it would be stronger. If I made a mix of this record, I would leave those two tracks off. It would get you in at 40 minutes, and I think it would be a super solid worthy album. Where'd you land?
I 100% agree. Jangling Jack, like I said, I never need to hear that song again. Thirsty Dog is fine. I just wish it wasn't on this record. It just, it ruins the mood of this album. It would be like when we were listening to that Massive Attack record, which is very, if they threw in a punk song in the middle of it, it would be like, what? This is not the vibe of this record. What are you doing?
Yeah, regardless of however good the song is, used to be like,
Or when we listened to the Faithless album, which was majority trip hop, and then there were two like house tracks, and you're like, wait, why is this happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a worthy album. If people have not checked out this record, they should. If they've not checked out Nick Cave, this is not a bad record to start with. I think you get the Nick Cave that people are interested in terms of the big production, the interesting lyrical subjects, and just his menacing approach to singing. I just always feel like he's like this, like he's real close. I'm singing right next to you. Like he'd be like awkwardly near you while he's singing and making it clear that you're not going to enjoy this, but you also kind of are.
But you have no choice.
You have no choice. That's 2 worthy albums from us. And we need to thank our patrons. I don't even remember who actually submitted it in the first time around. So whoever did, thank you for suggesting Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. If you would like to suggest a record, you just go to digmeoutpodcast.com. Anybody can do it. And it's the place where you can suggest for this podcast, the 90s rock podcast, and you can suggest for our 80s metal podcast. Both podcasts you can submit at the same place. So you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which please don't kill birds because they're fine. You don't need to, there's nothing.
Submit albums, don't kill birds.
Yeah, that's our motto. You get to vote in polls like this, our second chance poll, or the original tournament polls by going to dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. That's where all the voting occurs, both for polls like this and our album review polls when our patrons pick albums for us to check out. It's also where you can listen to our exclusive aughts episodes. We did 6 last year. We're doing 6 this year. About to post another one, and that'll be up before Thanksgiving. And then we'll have a couple more before the end of the year because we're just going to cram them all into December. That's how it's going to work. You can also go to Substack where our box newsletter comes out every week with news about 80s, 90s, and aughts relevant music, books, documentaries, stuff like that. And Apple Podcasts is where you go to leave positive feedback for the show. For Jay, I'm Tim, and we're out. We'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Well, I've been bound and gagged.